Hello and welcome. Sorry to be starting a few minutes late. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, Applied Behavior Analysis Therapy, Creating Habits That Stick, presented by Jilian DeTiberiis. My name is Katie Delaney, and I am the Family and Medical Outreach Coordinator for the New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome and Associated Disorders. I will be your facilitator. I am so excited to kick off the NJCTS MasterMinds webinar series, previously known as Wednesday webinars. Although the name has changed, our commitment to delivering top-notch resources for educators, healthcare professionals, and parents remains unwavering. Beforehand, let me just talk about our disclaimer. So the New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome and Associated Disorders, its directors and employees assume no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, objectivity, or usefulness of the information presented on our site. We do not endorse any recommendations or opinions made by any member or physician, nor do we advocate any treatment. You are responsible for your own medical decisions. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Jilian DeTiberiis. So Ms. Tiberius is the resident sleep expert at Graham Behavior Services. She earned her master's in applied behavior analysis at Caldwell University. She has worked in the area of sleep skills for over 6 years, has received specialized training from FTF Consulting, and is a certified sleep science coach. Ms. DeTiberiis, we are so happy to have you here. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. I am so excited and happy to be here as well. And I will just share my screen right now. Hooray! Okay, so I would love to see your reactions. I'll shout it out a couple of times. The other thing we're going to do is I'm going to do some poll responses so you guys can participate in them as well. Thanks, Katie, for the heart. Okay, so I am the clinical director at Graham Behavior Services. Like it was mentioned, I'm also a sleep specialist there. I've been a BCBA now for over 10 years. So I am happy to be here. And today we're going to talk about, you guys will have a basic understanding of ABA. You'll have an understanding of implementing the standard ABA procedures with the people that you work with and also with yourselves, and then an understanding of applying principles of ABA to different areas of your life. So who's GBS? Who is Graham Behavior Services? This in the center is our mission statement. We deliver services all over. So we've delivered trainings to parents, to staff, to police officers, many other types of people in different settings. Predominantly, we do work with individuals with autism, although it is not defined to only individuals with autism or special needs. So we work with individuals from the age of diagnosis. Our youngest client ever was 18 months old, up through to adulthood. And our oldest client right now is, I believe, 32 or 33. So there really is no limit. We deliver ABA therapy in home, in the community, in clinics, and in school settings. And we also deliver sleep consultation, health and wellness support groups, and parent and sibling support programs. And that is all within the use of ABA science. So it's not like, oh, we do other things in addition to our work with individuals with autism. We work with individuals with really many different diagnoses or no diagnosis at all, to help people achieve their goals. And we focus on 3 major things. Collaboration, we want to work together with families and the staff in other areas. Coordination, services will go together with individual families and their lifestyles. So we never want a family to be kind of like, ugh, I have to like fit in ABA therapy or something like that. We want to work together with families. And consistency, we want to offer continued support, see through the services until the clients reach their goals. All right, so we're going to get started with poll number 1, and you guys should be able to see the poll on your screen. So what do you think is the main purpose of applied behavior analysis? I have some options here, so just go ahead and select what you think is the main purpose. To teach individuals with autism, make meaningful changes, to work with individuals of all ages, or maybe you're not sure. Awesome. I see some people responding. So maybe like 1 more minute. But this is great. Thank you guys for participating in the poll. I could see like a lot of people are thinking make meaningful changes for the client and client's caregivers. That's a really good one. And it's okay if you're also not sure. It's kind of like what we're going to talk about today. Awesome. Yeah, so it looks like the majority of people think make meaningful changes for the clients and clients' caregivers. I would agree. We also work with individuals of all ages. We do teach individuals with autism new skills. So we will talk about all of these things today. First, we're going to start it out with what is behavior? Behavior is just the activity of living organisms. So anything that you do, say, or think. A way that we in behavior analysis quantify this is the dead man's test. If a dead man can't do it, it isn't behavior. So non-examples of behavior would be like laying down, being quiet, getting knocked over by the wind. Those are all things that could happen to a dead man. But examples of behaviors would be talking, driving, eating, showering, breathing, anything that you say or do, or anything that you think. So really a behavior is anything an organism exhibits. That being said, what are challenging behaviors? What makes a behavior challenging? If it interferes with learning of the student or the client or others in the environment, it can result in injury, it can cause property damage, or it's dangerous. Dangerous to the client, dangerous to the family. That's what makes a behavior challenging. So not all behavior is challenging. Not all behavior has to be changed. Sometimes we work to teach new behaviors. Actually, very often we work to teach new behaviors. And sometimes we work to reduce behaviors that are challenging or that are interfering with the progress of the clients that we work with. Then you want to think about how you describe behavior, and we call these operational definitions. So you want to include observable actions. What are the things that the person is actually doing that are the behavior? Getting out of chair, not beginning their tasks, hitting someone, or talking loudly. It should not include language that is subjective. So oftentimes I'll hear behavior described like, well, I don't know, I want to help my child, my spouse, or myself, but they're so lazy. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? I don't know what that is. Or you might want to help somebody because they're so angry. Well, I don't really know what angry looks like, but what are the things that they're doing? What are their behaviors that are indicating to you that they are angry? Are they hitting things? Are they ripping up papers? To indicate that they are lazy, quote unquote, are they sitting on the couch a lot? Are they not participating in activities? Like, what are the behaviors? What are the things that they're actually doing? So when we look at behaviors, we're looking for what are the observable actions? Also, by describing it like this, it can be measured by anyone and it's specific. You want to be as specific as possible because sometimes sitting and watching TV on the couch is totally okay. I wouldn't want to reduce that behavior 100%, but maybe I want my child to incorporate going outside a little bit more or participating with the family, playing games. So you want to be as specific as possible. When a behavior is occurring, that makes it problematic. And a really good way to think about things is that a person's behavior is not always what it seems. We like to consider all behavior as communication. So what you see is the behavior. What you see might be hitting, a child who hits a lot, but what you don't see is everything that's under the surface. Maybe they are having self-esteem issues. Maybe that's their developmental level. Maybe their communication is not all the way formed, and so they can't get their basic needs met, but when they engage in the hitting behavior, they get their needs met quicker. Maybe they're seeking out attention, but without hitting, they don't know any other way to request attention. Can I get a reaction to this, like a thumbs up or a heart if you guys agree? Anything to indicate like, yes, I can see how that makes sense. So we like to think of all behavior as a form of communication. Thank you guys so much for responding with your reactions. And what we're really trying to get at is what's underneath the surface to figure out how can we address that behavior. All right, so we're going to go to poll number 2. What is the most common myth you've heard about ABA? I'm sure that there are some things going through your mind right now, some things that you're thinking like it's only done at the table, it does not address problem behavior, it's damaging or harmful, it's just for kids, or reinforcement doesn't work. And there's no wrong answer. So if you think it is harmful or if you think like it doesn't work, definitely you could share your thoughts. There is no wrong answer here. We'll talk all about the common myths of ABA too. All right, thank you guys for voting. And like another couple minutes or a couple seconds for us to get everybody's votes in. All right, I'm seeing a lot of people say it's just for kids. Little bit on it's damaging or harmful, it does not address problem behavior, reinforcement doesn't work, but about 62% says it's just for kids. Okay, that is good. We'll talk a lot about the ABA therapy that we do for kids. Here are some common myths of ABA that we had. So it's only done at the table. A lot of people think, I don't want my child to do ABA because I don't want them to just sit at the table all the time. ABA or behavioral therapy, it's so much more than tabletop work. We go out into the community. We do what's called natural environment teaching, more of some people might consider that like a play therapy, where we're really interacting with the client to also teach them skills. It does not address problem behavior. So we address problem behavior all the time. And sometimes the way that we address problem behavior is by teaching new skills, because like I mentioned, sometimes they're engaging in that challenging behavior because they have a lack of communication. They can't communicate, I want attention, I want to stop this task, my head hurts, or I'm having pain somewhere. So we will actually teach what we call functional communication. So it will reduce the problem behavior. It's damaging or harmful when ABA is done correctly by a professional, by a BCBA. It should never be damaging or harmful. At Graham, actually, we are not allowed to put our hands on the clients in any way. We might do some regular hand-over-hand prompting to help them complete a task, but no protective holds or anything like that. So it's certainly not damaging, and it never should be manipulative. It's just for kids. I said at the beginning that we service clients straight through to adulthood. It's also not just for autism. So I didn't use that as one of the myths, but I think a lot of people think that ABA is exclusively used for the diagnosis of autism, but we teach typically developing people with a variety of diagnoses, how to achieve skills that they want, that they're seeking out our services for. And reinforcement doesn't work is the final one. So reinforcement is just the process of increasing behaviors. So if a reinforcer doesn't seem like it's working, it's probably just not functioning as a reinforcer, which we'll talk about too. So a major thing that we are trying to determine when we are working with a client is what's the function. So It could be one of these 4 functions. It could be attention. I'm trying to get somebody's attention. And attention is a really big function, especially for kids, but really for all people. You're always trying to get some attention. And if you want to think about it in the form of adults, or for adults and how it might be applicable in our regular lives, think about how great it feels when your boss says to you, "Hey, I love the work that you did. I really loved that presentation." Like if my boss says to me after this, like, "Hey, watched your presentation and I really loved it," that's a form of attention. And I would love that. I think most people would feel like that's reinforcing my behavior of giving presentations. It could be escape. So function could be escape from demands or aversive situations. You might see this when, you have students in a classroom and one student causes an issue in the class every single time that they are going to take a math test. And so every time they're going to take a math test, they're being really disruptive. They're sent out of the classroom to the principal's office. Now they've essentially escaped taking that math test. It could be tangible. Function is access to tangible or preferred items. So sometimes when you take your child to the grocery store and they start crying for the candy that's in the checkout line, and then you give them the candy to get them to stop crying when you're paying, that is tangible. The function is they wanted that item. And then it could be automatic. So the function is sensory, which basically means that it's not socially mediated. So I'm sure you cannot see, maybe can see, I move my hands a lot when I'm talking. That is just sensory input for me. It's not socially mediated. I just move my hands around when I'm talking, or I might be tapping my foot, or oftentimes you see people playing with their hair. All of those things are not socially mediated, which means that it doesn't matter if a person is near you or not near you, just internally somehow it feels good. So here I have some examples of the different functions. So the child yells while dad is on the phone to get dad to come back to him in the room to play with him. This is attention. Behavior occurs to get attention from someone. And I myself, I have 3 kids who are pretty young. The oldest is 4. And every single time they'll be playing by themselves. And then I'll be like kind of close to them. And if I take a phone call, it's like, oh, now we want mom to come into this room and talk to us, or like play with us or interact with us. I'm like, what? When I wasn't on the phone, you didn't even care what I was doing. But now that my attention is diverted, you want my attention back. So that behavioral episode is occurring because there is a lack of attention, or because the child wants your attention. Child tantrums at the grocery store. I kind of already gave this example, but because he wants chips and the parent said no, after tantruming for 15 minutes, the parent gives in and gets the child a bag of chips. That would be tangible. So the behavior occurs to get access to something. And then there's the student who struggles in math class, doesn't study for their test. Then on the day of their math test, the student pretends to be sick to get out of going to school. So the behavior of interest is maintained by delay or avoidance of some aversive stimuli. So sometimes it might just be you are delaying that stimuli. So like if you are kind of scared of the dentist, but you know you have to go this year, you have an appointment, but then you cancel it, you reschedule it for later. It's like, you will eventually go to the dentist, but you just want to delay as long as you possibly can. And then here's another example of automatic. You get bit by a mosquito, then 5 minutes later, you start scratching the spot where you were bit. When you scratch a mosquito bite, you are scratching to gain access to the relief felt in the moment. Therefore, you are mediating your own reinforcement. So it's not socially mediated. This would be automatic. The behavior of interest is maintained by access to some form of self-stimulation or sensory input. Reinforcement is not socially mediated, so it's not provided by somebody else. And how do we get more information about why and when a behavior happens? How do we get that information of the function of the behavior. What we do as BCBAs is we track ABC data: antecedent, behavior, consequence. So antecedent is what happens before the behavior occurs. The behavior, of course, is what the person does. What does the behavior look like? And the consequence is what happens immediately after the behavior. So when you're looking at the antecedent, all of these things are essentially like, the antecedent is what causes the behavior to happen, and the consequence is what causes the behavior to happen again. So if you think about the antecedent, what happens before the behavior begins? If you have a child who maybe is not getting a lot of attention, they are a little bit bored. So then as a behavior, they start throwing all their toys around the room. And as a consequence, you as the parent go in and you provide attention, you play with them. So the antecedent, that boredom, is what caused the behavior to occur. But your attention after the fact, after the behavior occurred, is what causes the behavior to occur again in the future. Because however we provide a consequence to the behavior, that's going to cause it to happen again and again and again if we provide reinforcement. So here are some additional examples. The setting is over there on the left. So if the setting is recess, the antecedent, Lizzie loses a game. As a behavior, she yells, cries, and falls to the ground. And as a consequence, peers try to calm her down and ask her to play again. The function in that situation would be attention, because Lizzie wanted to continue to play. That's why she's yelling, crying, and falling to the ground. And then the peers attend to her a lot and ask her to play again. So then that behavior, that crying and yelling, that behavior received a lot of attention. So then she will engage in that behavior again to get that attention again. If you look at this second example, language arts, Jason is asked to write a character response. He argues, he refuses to work, he uses profanity, so he engages in those disruptive, challenging behaviors. And as a consequence, he's sent to the principal, and that functioned as escape. So he didn't want to do that work, and then he got out of doing that work. And then the last example, unstructured class. So Johnny is seated next to peers. He tears up paper and stomps his feet. And as a consequence, his peers laugh at him and he smiles. And the function was attention. So it's so easy to see when you break it down like this. Oh, why might they be engaging in that behavior? And what consequence can I provide in the future? So that way we can teach new skills to get that behavior or to get that consequence. Because let's take the last example for Johnny. If Johnny doesn't know how to get his peers' attention appropriately, or how to make them laugh at appropriate times, then he's going to continue to engage in that behavior. So that way he continues to get that attention from his peers. So how does this apply to my life? I know you might be thinking like, oh, you know what? This applies to students, and I'm still not convinced that it doesn't only apply to kids, but it can apply to your life as well. So behavior analysis is applicable to all people in various situations because it's the science of behavior. It's essentially how behaviors continue and how behaviors develop. If we want to increase a behavior, such as exercise, so we want to increase exercise in our own lives, we want to reinforce ourselves for engaging in that behavior. If we're not engaging in the behavior of exercise, using the ABC chart for ourselves can help us figure out why. So I wrote up this what's the function ABC chart for that example. So if the setting is I'm at home after work, the antecedent is I want to watch a TV show. As the behavior, I cancel my gym session. And as a consequence, I get to watch the TV show now. That functions as escape. I did not have to go to the gym, and access to tangible. I got to watch my TV show. Now, what can you do to change this? If you know this is your usual schedule, what can you do to change this for yourself? Provide yourself some reinforcement for going to the gym. whatever that reinforcer would be for yourself. Maybe you go to the gym and then on the way home you get a Starbucks coffee. Maybe you go to the gym and then you can like buy yourself something. Whatever is a reinforcer for yourself. Plan another time to watch your TV show. So if that television show, that access to that tangible is really delaying you going to the gym, maybe just plan to watch that show before you go to bed. Plan another time to go exercise. So if like you can only watch that show when you get home from work, and you find that like I just don't have the energy to go to the gym at that time, plan another time to exercise that fits more into your schedule. Or find exercise you enjoy doing. I feel like that's one of those things that, you know, sometimes people will be like, oh, I have to go for a run. And then I look into it and I'm like, do you enjoy that activity? Do you find the action of running reinforcing? Do you find that you have the internal motivation or intrinsic motivation to go and do running? And they say like, no, I really hate running. I just really want to do cardio. It's like, okay, let's explore what else you can do that's going to be more naturally reinforcing to you that you actually enjoy, because there are many other options. So finding an exercise you enjoy doing might be helpful. All right, so general good practices. This is for clients that we work with, students, or really even for yourself. Greet your client every morning or every time you work with them. Engage in conversation at appropriate times. Remember that it's nicer to work with people that we like and enjoy. So you want to pair yourself with your clients. Find out what's important to them and incorporate their interests. Use humor when appropriate. Collaborate with your clients and use positive reinforcement. So like high fives, praise, and so on. And just like what I was saying with the exercise, like find things that the client enjoys. And if you are trying to help yourself learn a new skill, find things that you enjoy too. Preferential seating, so close to the instructor or close to the parent, and away from other triggers. Like for myself, I always want my kids to come and eat dinner with us at the table, my husband and I. So, you know, sometimes they'll say like, oh, but only if I sit next to you. It's like, okay, come on over. You can sit right next to me when we eat dinner at home. That doesn't bother me at all. I actually really enjoy it. But if that preferential seating is going to help them engage in that behavior, that's going to reinforce that behavior, then I want to participate in that. Minimal distractions, so like the iPad off or the laptop closed unless it's in use, and only necessary materials out on the desk. To just reiterate my eating dinner example, it's like I have to move every single thing off the table. My kids are 4 and I have 3-year-old twins. So I need to get every single thing off the table. The TV is off, the computers are away, the phones are away, and no markers or crayons or anything out on the table that they can also draw with. They'll be super distracted. Use visuals as reminders, like session rules or a schedule. And keep in mind, like not all prompts uh, have to be faded. Think about yourself. Do you have a calendar that you follow? Do you have a task or a to-do list? Myself, I have a calendar for work and a calendar for home. And then I also have a to-do list for home and I have a to-do list for work as well. And for my kids at home, I also have a schedule of how we're going to get ready in the morning. I have a schedule of what they're going to eat every day at lunch, so that way it changes. Nobody is asking me to fade those schedules away. So find what works for you, find what works for your clients, or for the students that you're working with. And keep in mind, like you can always change it. You can always make it less, like less obvious, or you could transfer it to a phone or something like that. But you want to make sure that you are giving your clients or your students a place to be independent, manage their own schedules. For positive reinforcement, it's a 5-to-1 ratio of praise to criticism or correction. So oftentimes, especially as a parent or sometimes as a teacher too, it's so easy to shout out when a person or student, a client is doing something that you want them to stop. But we have to remember that we have to say 5 times as much the things that they're doing great. So you want to use specific praise, like, I like the way you took out your notebook. I love the way you're sitting at your desk. I like the way that you came over to the table. I like how you cleaned up so nicely, versus just like a general good job, because we want to call out the things that we want to continue to see. Reinforcement can take many forms, like verbal, visual, tangible. Should be based on the preference of the learner. So if you have a learner that you're working with that really doesn't like to be touched, then pats on the back may not be a good fit for them, or high fives may not even be a good fit. Or, I've worked with clients before that, like, they don't like when you shout out, like, hey, love how you're doing a really nice job. You cleaned everything up. They get kind of like embarrassed by that. So maybe just like a simple thumbs up, or something else might work for that type of learner. Praise the smallest efforts and every instance of positive behavior initially. So if you're teaching a new skill, you want to praise even the smallest efforts. And if we think back to the example of you're trying to get yourself to go to the gym more, sometimes I will work with people who want to increase their gym frequency, like that I want to go 5 days a week for an hour each time. It's like, okay, well, you go 0 times right now. So let's start in a place where you could be successful. You can access the reinforcement after one session of 30 minutes. And you're going to praise even the smallest efforts. So let's say, I've worked with people before who say, like, I want to run a marathon. It's like, okay, we have to start really small. Let's see if you could take a 30-minute walk a couple days a week, and then increase from there. So you can always increase from there, but don't get discouraged because the person is taking the smallest efforts. You want to provide reinforcement to even just the smallest bit of effort and every instance of positive behavior initially. Additional good practices: state expectations using positive language. So I always call these like the do behaviors, not the don't behaviors. Walk in the hallway versus stop running. Even for my own kids, I say things like, okay, let's clean up nicely, versus stop throwing your toys all over the house. So trying to phrase it in a positive way. Use clear and concise language. Sit with your feet on the floor versus just sit nicely. So you want to make sure that you are being really clear. Provide choices. My favorite is to provide 2 choices, and I don't care which one they choose. Both choices are good. So if I'm working with a client and we are going to do either math or we're going to do reading, it's like, hey, do you want to do math or do you want to do reading? But either option is okay. It doesn't matter which one they choose first. Providing choices can give a lot of the ownership back to the clients that you work with. Use a calm and consistent tone of voice. Use language like first, then. First, you clean up, and then we play on the iPad. Break down skills into manageable chunks and provide breaks in between. Think about, even for yourself, the way that you work during the day, or the way that we do different things. You're not working for one 8-hour stretch and never ever taking a break or walking around or eating a snack or eating lunch. Maybe you are, but you should also break your skills down into manageable chunks and provide some breaks for yourself in between. You want to just make it so your clients or your children, the people that you work with, are able to be successful. Teach and reinforce the behavior that you want to see instead of the challenging behaviors. So we call these replacement behaviors. Teach the child to raise their hand instead of calling out. Teach your child to tap you on the shoulder to get your attention versus throwing a toy at you. You want to provide reinforcement to the behaviors that you want to see more often. Don't take it personal and be consistent. Behavior change takes time. Don't take it personal. Don't think that because they didn't change their behavior, it's something against me. Sometimes I even think of that like with my own kids, like, oh gosh, like, why is it always with me? It's like, no, don't take it personal. They're just learning these new behaviors. Here are some potential interventions by function for attention. So catch them being good. Tell them what they did to catch your attention. Hey, love how nicely you cleaned up that work. I loved how you took out your materials. I just like to see that you are nice to your friends. Increase opportunities for appropriate social interaction. So if they are trying to get your attention, then give them your attention for things that you want to see more of. Reactive strategies reward students when they raise their hand if you're in a classroom, minimize attentions when they do call out. So when they engage in problematic behaviors, minimize your attention to those behaviors. It would not be effective if the client was engaging in some behavior for attention to engage in reprimands or yelling behavior. And I'm not saying anybody does that, but it's just good to keep in mind that that would not be effective for an individual who wanted your attention, because even if you don't like to be yelled at or you don't want to be reprimanded, that's still a form of attention for the individuals that we work with. Interventions by function for tangible, proactive strategies, free access to things they like, being the attendance or calendar helper if you're in school, or just free access to an availability to things that they like. Functional communication training, so the ability to ask for things that they want versus engaging in a challenging behavior to get the things that they want. Reactive strategies reward appropriate requests or task completion. So you want to make sure that you are providing those tangible items like the iPad, snacks, stickers, as a reward for doing the things that you ask them to. And strategies that are not effective, free access after problem behavior has occurred. Essentially, like giving in with the chips example or the candy example, like where your child is crying in the grocery store and then you give them the candy. You would like to use one of these proactive strategies for them, like proactively, we're going to have some chips before we go so you're not hungry. And then reactively, if you get through the line nicely when we're leaving, I will give you a little piece of candy after we leave. Interventions by function escape, provide frequent breaks throughout the day. Like I mentioned already, you could do that for yourself as well. Provide breaks so that way you can take a break or your clients can take a break. Integrate easy tasks with new work. Remember, nobody wants to be working on the most difficult thing all the time. Sometimes when I'm going about my day, I might even incorporate some easier tasks, some things like checking my email or something that's a little bit easier, versus sometimes focusing on harder or newer tasks like creating trainings or something that I might find that takes up a lot more time or a lot more energy. Provide accommodations and other supports. So if you have like that student that always is yelling or creating a disruption to get out of the math test, what else can you do for that student so that way they feel successful taking the math test? Because if we can't make them successful in taking the math test, then they're going to continue to try to escape from that test. And reactive strategies reward appropriate requests to leave the class or leave the area with the intention that they will return to work at a later time. We often do break cards. So I'm requesting a break to get out of math class, but I will come back and I will finish working on this task. Strategies that are not effective, sending them out of the room or going to the office. It's done quite often when we see, school behavior plans, like that they're being sent to the principal's office. It's like, well, then we've let them escape from that task. Automatic, this would be kind of those non-socially mediated tasks or behaviors. Provide non-contingent access, just allow them to engage in that behavior. Introduce items that compete with the behavior or provide competing items on a schedule. Something like fidget spinners if a person is engaging in a lot of stereotypic behavior with their hands. You could do response blocking or differential reinforcement for reactive strategies, but things that are not effective, like assuming there's nothing that can be done or that medication is the only thing that can be done. So what else can be done? We're going to talk about prompts, verbal modeling, gesture, physical, and visual, and we're going to talk some more about reinforcement. All right, prompts. So prompts are a specific form of assistance given by an adult before or as the student attempts to use the skill. They may be additional instructions, gestures, demonstrations, touches, or other things that we arrange to do to increase the likelihood that people will make the correct response. A prompt is basically anything that you do to get yourself or your client to achieve this skill. When done correctly, this increases the rate of responding, it lowers frustration, it helps students learn more efficiently. Effective prompts are delivered once and occasion the target response. How many times am I just thinking in my own head of me telling my kids, like, okay, clean up your room. Okay, clean up your plates from dinner. Okay, clean up your plates. It's not an effective prompt if you have to say it more than once. So you want to be able to deliver an effective prompt. It could be verbal with you telling them, it could be modeling with you showing them, it could be physical. So like I am hand over hand helping them pick up their plate and bring it into the sink. For giving effective prompts for new skills, you are going to use the most hands-on prompt possible and shift to the least. So the most hands-on prompt would be like a hand over hand. I'm going to take your hands and I'm going to help you complete this task. And I'm going to fade to the least intrusive prompt, which might be like a gesture or just pointing to it, so that way you know to take your plate to the sink. For known skills, once they already know the task, I'm going to use the least intrusive prompt. So I'm going to just point to it first, and I'm going to go up to the most intrusive prompt if they don't start doing it. So I might help them do hand over hand prompting. Your location in relation to the student or the child matters. If you're doing classwork or transition in the hall, whatever your location is definitely matters. How close you are when you're providing those prompts. Keep the end goal in mind, which is independence. You eventually want your children, your clients, yourself to be able to do the prompts or to do the task independently, especially for the younger the learner is, but really no age limit on that. But especially if the client is younger, you want them to gain independence as quickly as possible, as long as it's age appropriate. The goal is to use prompts to teach skills and then fade them as soon as possible so the student can be independent. We don't want our students or our clients to develop prompt dependency. It's a problem. Prompt dependency is when a client cannot do the task without your prompt. And it's a problem when they start waiting for your prompt to do the task. If you don't tell them to do the task, they don't do it at all. And key indicators of this, passive responding, like they're not engaged or attending. They just ask what's next, or they're waiting for you to tell them like, yep, that's good, go put your plate in the sink. They're looking for the prompt from the instructor. So we want to avoid prompt dependency, because if we develop prompt dependency in our clients and in the people that we work with, it's essentially making us always have to be there. That's why we want our clients to be able to reach independence. Key indicators from staff of prompt dependency. Sometimes we create prompt dependency on our clients and we don't even realize it. Prompting skills that you know your student or your child knows how to do. Repeating instructions without providing a more appropriate prompt. Answering for the student or for the client. Using multiple prompts together at once, like a verbal prompt and a physical prompt, or you're hovering around them. Try to always shift to independence. All right, we're going to go through reinforcement. So reinforcement strengthens the behavior. Reinforcement always causes the behavior to increase in the future. It increases the likelihood of that behavior occurring. So if you think you're using a reinforcer for your client, but the behavior is not increasing, the behavior is not continuing to occur, then you are not using something that is a reinforcer for that client. So when we hear that language of like, oh, reinforcement doesn't work, then probably you're not using an item or an activity that is a reinforcer for that behavior. Think about it in the sense of a preferred item versus a reinforcer. I really, really, really like coffee. I love Starbucks, but I'm not coming to work at the end of the week for a Starbucks. I really like it. That's a preferred item, but it's not a reinforcer for my full work day or for my full work week. What the reinforcer is my paycheck. And even if there's things that I really love about my job, ultimately, those are all things that are preferred. I'm not coming to work without my ultimate reinforcer, which is my pay. And I think many people would agree with that. So remember, reinforcers, and this will differ amongst any person: behavior specific praise, a high five, providing stickers, providing extra break time, even tangible things, even special snacks or candy, anything that the client likes. But you have to make sure that it is the scale, that the scale of the task matches the scale of the reinforcement. How to use reinforcement effectively? Use it for behaviors you want to see happen more often, like the client raising their hand as opposed to calling out. You want to make sure that you are using it for things that you want to see happen again and again more often. Use it for learning new skills. When learning a new skill, your child should receive lots of reinforcement at first. I always say you cannot provide too much reinforcement, but you can provide too little reinforcement. So you want to make sure that you are providing as much reinforcement as possible, especially in the beginning of learning a new skill. Don't worry, it will be faded out after your child shows success. Or after your client shows success, but you want to make sure that you are providing enough reinforcement in the beginning for it to become successful. Use it right away, as soon as the behavior happens. This will make it clear to the learner as to why they received something good. If you wait, you might accidentally reinforce an inappropriate behavior like stereotypy or noncompliance. If you wait, you might miss your opportunity to even provide a reinforcer at all, or you might reinforce the incorrect behavior. So they might have done a couple of great things, but you're only reinforcing the most recent behavior that they've done. Pair with behavior specific praise, like great job making your bed, rather than just great job. And behavior specific praise allows you to tell them specifically what they did that you are providing the reinforcer for. What does it look like when an individual is not motivated? They have a lack of responding, or they're incorrect. They walk away. They just are not attending to you. They increase in problem or off-task behavior, or they don't consume or interact with the item that you've given them. Sometimes I give my kids and I say like, oh, you know what? You did so great cleaning up. You girls can watch TV. And if they're not really interacting with the TV show, I'm like, okay, they're not really motivated to watch this. That's not functioning as a reinforcer. So maybe we have to just do something else. What are some of the things that staff might do that may affect motivation, assuming that the reinforcer from the other day is the motivator now? We're using something of interest to the child and assuming the item will be reinforcing. It's kind of like the example that I gave about paycheck. Something that they like will not automatically be a reinforcer, especially if the task is really difficult. Making a reinforcer available all day for all behaviors, or requiring more response effort than it's worth. So you want to make sure that you're matching the reinforcer to the difficulty of the task. Why is this important? No one works for free. Without reinforcement, you are unable to give feedback to your learner to strengthen or increase appropriate behaviors in the future. The rate of skill acquisition will be slower. You can often see an increase in problematic or interfering behaviors without a proper reinforcer. And where can ABA be applied? Schools, group homes, home programs, communities, all of these areas. Acceptance and commitment training is a form of mental health counseling that ABA applies to organizational behavior management, like working with corporations, addiction, animal behavior, sustainable societies, sports and fitness, all of these different areas, ABA can be applied. So poll number 3, this is our final poll. What do you think is the most interesting additional application of applied behavior analysis? So go ahead and participate in that poll. we will see what people think. I put on here acceptance and commitment therapy, organizational behavior management, animal behavior, sports and fitness, and social change and public policy. So I see a couple people participating in this. Let's see what people think. Social change and public policy looks like it's getting a lot. Yeah, that's great. Sports and fitness. I would say most, it looks like social change and public policy got about 55%. So yeah, I feel like that's a really great place to be looking, for a different application of ABA. And this is how you can connect with us. This is myself, Jilian DeTiberiis, and this is the company that I work for, Graham Behavior Services. And if you really enjoyed us today, please connect with us on one or all of our social media accounts. And then I guess we can open up for questions.
Yes, perfect. Well, Jillian, thank you so, so much. So we already have one question that was
Okay.
submitted. So I'm going to ask this question real fast, and then I'm going to open it up so that everybody else can ask any questions that they have. So this individual said that they have a teenager that has a complex diagnosis, one of which is DMDD. He has a lot of anger and outbursts when he doesn't get what he wants. They do not feel that they're reinforcing any behaviors. They said they don't give in and ignore his behaviors, so no attention reinforcement. And they were asking, can ABA be used to help him access the coping skills he knows but does not use? She said that he's 14, has learned all the coping skills and knows them well, just does not access them in the moment and feels bad about it after, saying he didn't have control in the moment. Not sure if ABA would be right for this or not.
Yeah, definitely. So I think a couple of things that we talked about today could really be helpful with that. And if you think about like, okay, you're not reinforcing the behaviors, you're not kind of like giving in to those challenging behaviors, but you want to provide a lot of reinforcement to use of the coping strategies. So are those behaviors getting enough reinforcement? And I think that that could be the area in which ABA would fit into that.
Okay, so right now I just allowed everyone to speak if they would like. I'm going to stop the recording and feel free to jump in.